I'm Mark Grissom, and I was Pat's favorite son. On behalf of my father, my brother, and the entire family, let me say a great big thank you to each and every one of you for being here today to celebrate the life and homegoing of the greatest mom in the whole world. My mom, Hattie Ann Grissom. A very special thank you to the incredible administration and staff at the Signature Healthcare Center in Cleveland for taking such excellent care of my mom for the past 5 months. Thank you to Pastor Mitch Maloney and the North Cleveland Church of God for the prayers and visits that you made to my mom while she was in the hospital and nursing home. And a very special thank you to my partner, Scott Carter, and all the staff of the funeral home for the services and attention to detail for my mom's funeral. I'm not a minister, and I'm not the one bringing the message for my mom's funeral. That will be left up to my brother in just a few minutes. I've worked in the funeral profession for 27 years, and I've directed funerals for hundreds of family members who have lost loved ones. For 27 years, I have said to those families, I am very sorry for your loss. On December 14, 2010 at 4:56 a.m., those words took on a whole new meaning to me. For now, more than ever, I truly know what those individuals are going through. If I were the minister today, and if I needed a scripture to best describe my mom, it would be, spare the rod and spoil the child. There are many here today, including Dr. Meyer, my college president and Old Testament survey teacher. They could give us the theological meaning of rod. My interpretation would be a staff or a stick. My mom's interpretation of a rod was a belt, a shoe, a hairbrush, a coat hanger, a camel whip my dad brought back from the Holy Land, or Aunt Jane, even the large end of a boat oar. My mom took that scripture verse more literal than anyone else I know. When it was time for my brother or me to get a whipping, which was quite often, she would somehow manage to grab the first thing that was within a 4-foot reach of wherever she was. And when I was a kid growing up in church, you did not even think about talking or making any movements during the service because her thumb and index finger would end up on the bottom of your leg and she could pinch the fire out of you better than anybody I know. My mom liked to make an example out of me in church in order to get other kids' attention and to make them behave. One time in choir practice, there were several kids on the complete opposite side from where I was sitting. And they were talking and not paying attention. All of a sudden, my mother stopped the song, looked at me and said, "Mark Grissom, if you don't stop your foolishness, you're going to get it when you get home." I looked back and said, "Mom, I wasn't doing anything. That's it. You're getting it for sassing back. Your father will take care of you later." That statement haunted me. The problem was when later came and Dad got home, Dad never took a chance to listen to my side of the story. He just listened to her and off came the belt and the whipping commenced. I never could understand how come I got so many spankings when I was a kid, but when her grandson and the apple of her eye, Greg, came along, she forgot all about how to whip somebody. Not that you turned out bad, Greg. My mom loved me, and I love her. When I was a little boy growing up in Zion, Illinois, my greatest joy and her greatest joy was when I would sit up in her lap in the recliner, and we'd watch TV together, or she would read to me, or we would just sit there and talk. She always made sure that when we went on at least one family vacation a year, Disney World seemed to be her favorite place to go. Actually, my mom's favorite place to go was wherever there was a pool or a beach because nobody in the world loved to lay out in the sun and get a tan more than her. She always made sure that every Christmas season my brother and I got everything we asked for under the tree. She was so proud of me when I graduated from mortuary college, and she loved to brag to everyone that her son owned a funeral home in Cleveland, Tennessee. She was an incredible, awesome mom. Last October, when her health began to fail really bad in Fort Myers, Florida, I went down to see her and Dad and spend a few days there. It did not take long for me to ask my dad to sell his condo in Fort Myers and move to Cleveland, because I knew I was not going to have much longer to be with my mom, the way her health was declining so rapidly. They moved to Cleveland in January of this year. In June of this year, my mother left her home for the final time. She spent 2 weeks in Sky Ridge, and then we had to move her to long care term facility due to what doctors call terminal Alzheimer's. There is no possible way for me to stand here today and talk about the greatest mother in the world without mentioning the greatest father in the world. My dad loved my mom with the most incredible, unfailing, unconditional love that anyone could ever imagine. He'd get up every morning between 5 and 6 a.m., have a bowl of cereal, get cleaned up, and be at the nursing home with my mom by 7 a.m. Most every day he would stay at the nursing home with my mom until Wheel of Fortune was over at 7:30 p.m. And then he'd go over to her bed. He'd lean over, he'd give her a kiss, and he'd say, "I love you, Shook." My parents always had a special way of telling each other, "I love you." And the other one would say, "I love you most." "Dad, I love you. You're the greatest example in the world of a husband and father that anyone could ever know. And I want to thank you for loving my mom for 52 devoted years." If you knew my mom within the last 5 months, or if you went to visit her in the last 5 months at Signature Healthcare Center, you would inevitably hear these words, "I want to go home." She had an incredible desire and passion to get out of there and go home. 1 week before she passed away, my dad and I knew that she was getting very weak and her body was slowly shutting down. Every day that passed, we could see a drastic change in her condition, and about 3 days before she died, I was able to tell her I loved her, and she responded in a very low, shallow, weak voice, "I love you." That was the very last time I'd hear my mom tell me those words. 3 days later, God in heaven was so merciful to my mom, and Tuesday morning at 5 a.m., she took her last breath here on earth, and her next breath was in heaven with her family and loved ones who had gone on before. My mom wanted to go home. On December 14, 2010, her wish came true. She went home. She fell asleep. She awoke in God's new heaven. She is now sheltered safe within the arms of God.